Hi guys, it's Christine. Welcome back to the channel. This week I'm going to be talking about Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I know that Sally Rooney is one of those writers where you kind of love her or hate her. I personally love her. I understand why some people don't. I think it's one of those, of the two books that I've read, and I've only read two of her novels, but so far I've only read Normal People and Intermezzo, and in both cases not a lot happens really, but it's more about how the characters sort of react and interact with each other. So I personally really like that style of writing, but I get that it's not maybe everybody's cup of tea. Intermezzo is about two brothers, Peter and Ivan. Their father has just recently passed away, and they are sort of processing their grief in very different ways. Peter is the older brother. He's a lawyer in his 30s who lives in Dublin. And then Ivan is in his 20s and he's a chess player. He used to play competitively. He has kind of let that slide for a while now. So even though a lot of people, including his brother Peter, think that he's a chess genius, he hasn't really pursued it in a while. Not in any real way. But at one of the chess games where he is playing, he meets Margaret, who is, she's significantly older, but I'm not sure exactly if they ever say, I think she's like 35. So she's about 15 years older than Ivan is. So he gets into a relationship with her. And meanwhile, you've got Peter, who has sort of two relationships. One with Sylvia, who was his one true love, who it's never really specified what happened, but she has been in an accident and it's left her with chronic pain. So she doesn't, they broke up because she can't have intercourse anymore. She's always in pain. It comes and goes in its severity, but it's always there. And she doesn't want to hold him back. So she, even though they still have a relationship, like they're still friends, they still see each other, he's still supportive of her, they're not together anymore. So he is also with another character named Naomi, who is in her early 20s, I think. And she's very much a fly by the seat of your pants kind of girl. The thing I really like about Sally Rooney is that, like I said, her stories are more about the characters and their interactions with each other rather than like big plot devices. So it's their choices and what they do on sort of a daily basis that move the plot forward rather than, something big happens. Because in this book, the big thing has already happened in that their dad has died. And the two brothers are very different. And so their dad was kind of the bridge between them. And now that he's gone, they're kind of trying to figure out how to navigate, how to relate to each other. But also, I think it's interesting, like Peter, when he finds out about Ivan's relationship with Margaret and finds out that Margaret is older than Ivan, he at first is quite angry about it and never really sees the hypocrisy in that he's in his 30s and he's dating a 20-year-old, but for some reason it's not okay when it's the reverse gender where Margaret is the older. So that makes, that puts a wedge between the two brothers. And like I said, they don't have that bridge of their dad anymore. And it's them sort of navigating a very complicated relationship. And I think it's really cool that they're allowed to be complicated. They're allowed to be kind of unlikable at times, but also incredibly likable at other times. And Sally Rooney lets her characters grow. There is a part of the book where it sort of describes Ivan's very very unkind opinion about pregnant women riding the bus. Well, pregnant women riding the bus who expect you to give up your seat. And his whole thing is like, well, don't get pregnant if you don't want to be on your feet. Like, it feels sort of like he is maybe a little bit neurodivergent, although it never really gets into that. But it feels like he could have fallen into the incel red pill narrative, but he hasn't. And he's got this relationship now that's making him see the world in a different way. And I think he's already started to outgrow that kind of very childish view about the world and about women. But this relationship with Margaret is helping him further that. And then you've got Peter, who he is tying himself in knots over being in a relationship with two women, even though the relationships are different. They're very different from each other, but he feels guilty, even though they both know about each other. Naomi knows about Sylvia. Sylvia knows about Naomi. They're both fine with it. They like the arrangement that they have. But Peter has this sort of idea about how relationships are supposed to be, and they're supposed to be monogamous, and they're supposed to only be one person and one person. And these women are both like, well, no. I mean, Naomi's not monogamous to Peter. She is, young and having fun. And then Sylvia is like, well, I can't have a full relationship, and I want you to experience that with other people, but I still want to be in your life, so it's fine. But he just ties himself in knots throughout the story about it, over his guilt. And I think he has a lot of guilt associated with, he had a complicated relationship with his dad, and both of them, both Peter and Ivan, have a very complicated relationship with their mom. And again, that bridge of the father is not there anymore. And now that they're older and out of the house, and she doesn't seem to want them there, do they have an obligation to keep a relationship going with her? So it's very interesting, all of the different aspects of relationships, how people relate to each other, especially how they relate to each other in times of grief, how we can be vulnerable with each other, but protect ourselves too. Like, I really like the themes. And like I said, Sally Rooney books, they don't have a lot of like big plot devices. So it is very much just how these characters relate to each other. And it is a long book. I think it's 437 pages, at least this copy is. So that's not a short book. And could it have been shorter? Maybe. But I just really enjoyed this world. I really enjoyed listening to these characters talk to each other and about each other, and sort of navigate that idea of like who they are in the absence of their father, who they are in relation to each other and to their siblings and lovers and family. It's just, I really liked it. If you like Sally Rooney's work, I think you'll really like this one. I really, like I said, I really like the themes in it. And I like that there's no right or wrong answers. It's just, these are people who are flawed, who, maybe Peter drinks too much, and maybe he shouldn't be dating somebody who's that much younger than him. And maybe Ivan shouldn't be dating somebody who's that much older than him. But those relationships are still good. They still have value to the characters, and how you move through the world being who you are as a person and allowing yourself room to grow and not being so rigid in your thinking. I just really liked it. It's one that I would for sure recommend. The strength of Sally Rooney's work for me has always been the really layered and complicated and rich character development that she does with all of the characters in her books. So if that sounds like the kind of thing that you like, then I would absolutely recommend Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. All right, that's it for me this week. Bye.